In over a dozen cases that have been ruled as suspicious drownings, a smiley face has been found near the body. The smiley face killer has been somewhat of a theory for a while, from 1997 all the way up to 2017. 45 bodies of college-age males have been found in 11 states, all in bodies of water. And many of these cases are strikingly similar. While police have just ruled this off as an accidental drowning, New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, both extremely credible sources with about 40 years of combined experience, have been working hard to solve these unsolved cases. They believe for many reasons that police have ignored obvious signs that we have a serial killer or a group of serial killers on our hands, and that they could be potentially responsible for up to 335 cases. All of the victims have been male, college-age, athletic, popular, and high on academic achievements, so they suspect that these murders may be out of jealousy. Almost all of the bodies found show signs of dying on land, and come back positive for a roofie drug. So why were these ruled as an accident? Let's look at the cases. Part 2 to the smiley face killer. So first, let's talk about the case of Patrick McNeil. On February 16th of 1997, Patrick was last seen with his friends at a bar called the Dapper Dog. This is located in Manhattan's Upper East Side. After throwing up in the bathroom, he told his friends he was leaving and would be taking the subway back. And after that, no one saw Patrick again, and his body was recovered floating next to the Brooklyn Pier in the East River, 50 days later and 12 miles from where he was last seen. After looking at CCTV footage, he can be seen stumbling down the street and last seen turning left onto 90th Street. However, it doesn't seem like he's alone. A van actually follows pretty closely behind him, and when he stops to throw up, they stop too. After a witness got a partial view of the plate, police still refused to look for it because they thought it would be too expensive, and just dismissed it as an accidental drowning, even though his autopsy death was classified as undetermined. His blood alcohol level did not seem consistent with the state that he was in. That's when Detective Gannon promised Patrick's parents that he would find their son's killer or killers, and there was more proof that it was a murder. Part 3 to the smiley face killer. So why didn't Detective Gannon think that Patrick had drowned? Well, police ruled it this way because of an overconsumption of alcohol. However, his blood level of alcohol was not extremely high, which would not have been consistent with him throwing up. He was recovered on his back, which is unusual for a drowning. Blood lividity is the process in which the person's blood will stop moving after the person is deceased. For example, if you die on your side, your blood will pool to the side. And even though he was found on his back, the blood lividity was absent from his back, which is where it would be if he had died in that position. He had thermal injuries on both his hands and torso as if he had been burned, and strangulation markings on his neck. The most telling thing, though, is that his feet and hands did not present any skin slippage, which would have been consistent with having been submerged for 50 days. Nor was he bloated, which is found in a lot of drowning cases. In fact, the signs on his body would have been consistent with him being in the water for only 24 hours. Gannon's theory? He was stalked, abducted, held for an extended period of time, murdered, and then disposed of in the water. Part 4 to the smiley face killer. So now let's talk about the case of William Hurley. In October of 2009, he called his fiancée to come pick him up from a sporting event, letting her know that he was feeling really tired and that his phone was about to die, but gave her his location just in case. She came, and he was nowhere to be found. His body was found 6 days later in the Charles River in Boston, Massachusetts. This man was a Navy veteran. Similarly to Patrick, surveillance footage showed him stumbling. But again, when examining his body, his blood alcohol level was very low. So they decided to test for a roofie, and he came back positive with GHB, which would have explained the stumbling for both of them with such a low alcohol level. Not only this, but his phone was smashed nearby him. He had blunt force trauma to the head and eye socket and behind his left leg. But again, police said he must have slipped, hit his head, and accidentally drowned. It's so suspicious to me that the police are just writing it off as an accident, even though this man was literally in the Navy and able to communicate his location. And the case that comes after this is somehow more mysterious. Part 5 to the smiley face killer. So the next case that we're going to talk about is Dakota James, who was literally a swim team captain. On January 5th of just 2017, he goes out to a bar with some coworkers, leaves to go home, and then is never seen again. 40 days later, his body is found in the Ohio River near Neville Island. On CCTV, he wasn't stumbling at all, just looking at his phone, and then walks towards an alleyway. 10 miles from this area is where his body's found. However, to have gotten there on its own, it would have had to travel through a dam, but his body didn't have a single scratch or bruise on it, which would have been consistent for going through something like that. Not only this, but again, there was roofie in his system, and Gannon even said it looked like there was strangulation marks on his neck. According to the autopsy, there was not enough water in his lungs to prove that he had drowned. And even though he had been missing for 40 days, his body only had 3 days of decomposition. To add to the spookiness, 11 smiley faces were found spray painted close to the bridge where his body was found. And again, shockingly, this was ruled as an accidental drowning. Part 6 to the smiley face killer. So there are so many cases that have been theorized to be victims of the smiley face killer. Another was Todd Gieb, who went missing in July of 2005 and was found in Lake Michigan 21 days later. He was found vertical in the water, like it looked like he was standing, and his body only showed 2.5 days of decomposition. In 2006, Christopher Jenkins is another case found in the Mississippi River. Tommy Booth is another. Lucas Holman, Brian Welzian. The list goes on and on. And I could probably make 50 TikToks on this thing. So why haven't these been treated as a serial killer case? Well, there was a report that came out in 2010 debunking the theory and gave about 18 reasons why the smiley face killer doesn't exist. A huge reason being that drowning is the third most common cause of death in the US for mostly men. So I guess it does happen often. Also, a graffiti smiley face is pretty common. Whether the smiley face killer exists or not, these cases shouldn't have just been dismissed as accidental drownings. However, there is a first-hand story from someone who believes that they were a potential victim of the smiley face killer. And I'll be posting that story on the middle Reels tab of my Instagram. Check it out.
This is a story of the time that I caught my neighbor's mom talking smack about me. So I don't know about you guys, but every single Wednesday in my middle school, we would have a bagel sale. And some people's parents would come in to help out. And my neighbor's mom was one of those parents. And I had a best friend at the time whose mom would also work at the bagel sales. But this best friend of mine, her mom never let us hang out with each other because she felt that I was a bad influence on her. When in reality, it was the complete opposite. She was the one that snuck the boys in her house, if you guys remember that story time, where they peed in a flower pot. So basically her mom wouldn't let us hang out. And sometimes my friend would go with her mom in the morning, basically as a ride to school, and to help out with the bagels too. And one day when she went in with her mom, my neighbor's mom also was there too. So my friend starts eavesdropping into their conversation, and my friend's mom brings me up and says how much of a bad kid I am and a bad influence. And my neighbor's mom was like, "Oh wow, that's my neighbor, like we always suspected something bad about her, our whole entire neighborhood knows this about her," basically making stuff up about me. So then I go home crying.
Imagine TikTok being so powerful that they actually help you identify the person that almost murdered you. On my For You page the other day, I found this viral video that you guys might recognize, which states videos I took before almost being hunted and murdered. I clicked on her page, listened to her story, and was like, I have to know more. So I reached out and got the full thing. This is the case of Flowers Don't Growl. April 29th through April 30th of 2019, Taylor and her boyfriend Chris decided to take a trip to Falls Creek Falls, Tennessee. Taylor was 5 months pregnant at the time, so they figured they needed one last little trip before they were going to have a baby. And Taylor swore that Chris was going to propose. So that's why she documented so much of this trip, not even realizing that later on it was going to be used as evidence. So they set up at their assigned camping lot. They spent their time hiking, exploring, having fun. Taylor would collect flowers along the way to document it for memory's sake, but please keep these flowers in mind. And then on the second day, everyone from their assigned area was...
So luckily this is not my real mom. This is my stepmom. Her and my dad married a few years ago. So my family and my boyfriend's family are pretty close. My boyfriend's parents and my parents, aka my stepmom and my dad, get along with his parents. A little backstory on my stepmom. After my dad and my mom got divorced, he met her and they started dating pretty quickly. And they got married after only 5 months of having dated. So she becomes my stepmom, but she never really made any effort to get to know me. And I never really liked her. Like, she gave me a weird feeling. So my boyfriend and his family asked us to go on a camping trip one time. And my dad and I didn't really want to go because we never really go out. But my stepmom was super keen on going and she finally convinced us to go, so we ended up going. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, why do you want to go to this camping trip so much? We finally get there and set up our camping tents. That's when my dear stepmom says that she doesn't want me and my boyfriend sleeping in the same tent just in case we try to do something. In other words, she didn't want him and I to do the dirty. Why? Because she was hoping that my boyfriend and her would do the dirty. Part 2 is up.
So today in English class, our English teacher was going through the rules again, just because I guess like some people were forgetting them or like breaking the rules. So anyway, she was like, just to remind you guys, there's no food in class, no talking to your neighbor without permission. And if I catch you with your phones, then you're gonna have to have it taken away and your parents are gonna have to come get it. And when she said that part about the phones, this kid raised his hand, and he's like a really creepy kid. And he was like, well, what if I shoot you? Like, hold up. What? You just threatened to shoot a teacher? So I just like looked at him and I scooped my desk away and the whole class went silent. Like nobody said anything. We were all just staring at him. Like we were all just in shock. Like, did he just threaten to shoot a teacher? After like 10 seconds of it being like completely silent, he reached in his backpack after he said he was going to shoot someone.
Honestly, I am so embarrassed to be telling this story, and if you're a makeup artist, don't come for me, please. One time I had a client who was a friend of a family member who reached out to me just a couple of days before the dance asking me if I could do her daughter's homecoming makeup. Let me just point out that at this time I had already graduated high school and I'd been out for a minute. So it had been a while since I had done somebody's prom or homecoming makeup. I had mostly moved on to doing photo shoots, some weddings, or just coming up with crazy looks to do on myself for fun. So when I asked what type of look she wanted, she sent me a look from Pinterest that I had literally seen the exact reference photo for probably like 50 times. I was like, great, this is going to be super easy, nothing to worry about here, so I was like, sure, I'll do it. So on the day of the dance, I go over to my client's house. One of the first things I do whenever I do someone's makeup is make sure that I have a foundation and concealer shade that will match their skin tone. And this girl was abnormally pale. She was absolutely beautiful, and her skin literally reminded me of porcelain.